Museums usually try to preserve artifacts for as long as they can in order to display them and tell stories about the past. But what if you don't have an artifact, or what if you can't take care of something properly? What are other ways of preserving or sharing history? I'm Emily, and I'm an educator at MOHAI, and this is Collection Connections Objects in Question, where we take a quick peek at an artifact to see what it can tell us about the past. Today, we're going to be exploring something on display at the museum, and we're going to be looking at this sculpture, the Wawona, by artist John Grade. So, what questions do you have right away? I have two. So my first one is simply, who is John Grade? Who is this artist? John Grade is a Seattle-based artist whose work is often inspired by changing geological and biological systems in the natural world. And he often works with a studio team to create immersive, large-scale, site-specific works. Now, the second question I have is, why is it called Wawona? And this sculpture is actually an artifact that was turned into a work of art. And so the wood from this sculpture came from a really large historic ship called the Wawona. And the name for that ship comes from a Yosemite Valley place name that was used by American settlers, but taken from the Miwok people. Let's explore this sculpture from top to bottom, inside and out, using as many of our senses as we can, except for taste. So what do you see or notice right away? For me, it's that this sculpture is huge. So it goes from almost the floor of the museum, there's a little bit of a gap at the bottom, all the way to the ceiling. This sculpture is over 65 feet tall and weighs 11,000 pounds. It's massive. Next, let's look at the materials. So it looks like this sculpture is almost entirely made out of wood. We've got some really nice wood grain that we can see. Lots of different rings and kind of wood stripes all over the place. And some of the wood is this really kind of dark caramel, almost red color. And then some of the wood is much darker, it's almost black. And then it looks like there are different seams that we can see. So not only do there seem to be separate panels, but there are kind of places where the grain doesn't quite match up, running top to bottom, also around these knobs. So speaking of shapes, we've got these knobs all over the place. They kind of are cylinder, but tapered at the end, so they're kind of like little volcano shapes. And when we look at one directly, they are holes or circles. And if we look at kind of where the base of the knob meets the panel, we can see that there's also a seam of some kind as well. So kind of where the two grains don't quite match up, and also a seam on the inside of the knob. What does this sculpture feel like? So it's hard, it's made out of wood, and when I pushed on it, it moved. And it's swaying, and it's making a sound, a really gentle sound. And then it's really smooth. This wood is super, super smooth. Now let's take a walk around this sculpture. So we've got an entryway, which is cool. And there are some other places where we can see something metal that's going into the wood. It kind of seems like maybe a really big nail head. There's another one over here that looks like it's been flattened or hit a lot more than the other one. So it's really dark inside the sculpture, but we've got some light kind of coming in through the holes or the knobs that we saw on the outside. As we look down, we can see that there's a window. There's a glass pane, and if we look down through the window, we can see that there's a part of this sculpture that is below the floor of the museum. And it looks like just a total void down there. But sometimes if there's enough light and also it's kind of windy outside, you can notice that there's some water moving. So there's water underneath the museum. So this is going through the floor and the base of the museum to the water. Now let's move our gaze up. So we can kind of see that there are some metal frames running horizontally and kind of spaced out towards the top of the sculpture. Where the knobs are facing the outside of the sculpture, we kind of see holes. And where there were holes on the outside of the sculpture, we can see that there are knobs on the inside towards the top. And there's light coming in through kind of a gauzy skylight. And we get a better sense as we look up as kind of the shape of this sculpture. Let's try to bring all the different things that we've noticed about this work of art together. What does this sculpture bring to mind? Even though I know that this is made out of the wood of a ship, it still has a lot of things that remind me of a ship. So when we were inside and we looked up, we saw kind of the outline or the shape of the bottom of a boat or a hull. Also, whenever we were pushing on this sculpture, it swayed gently, kind of like a ship. It has those nice creaking noises as well. We also noticed these knobs, right? What's up with them? So the artist, John Grade, has a couple of different things that he was thinking about in kind of making these different parts of the sculpture. So one was phytoplankton, so tiny, tiny little microscopic organisms that live in the sea. And also, as far as the knobs going in and out of the sculpture, thinking about the waves moving around a ship. A lot of visitors, when they come to the museum, these remind them of barnacles, which they totally remind me of barnacles on the side of a ship as well. So another thing that we noticed was the materials, which are a mix of older and newer materials. So we've got the metal frames, which are newer, they look newer, kind of supporting all of the different pieces of this sculpture and holding them together. And then most of the sculpture is this really old wood that we noticed has a lot of discoloration, right? And so that's because when the Wawona was operating as a working ship from 1897 to 1947, it was both used as a lumber ship and also as a fishing vessel. So this discoloration is coming from mostly the fish oils and the iron nails and the elements mixing together and kind of seeping into the wood itself. We also noticed that we can touch this, right? So my hands are also covered in totally natural, pretty clean oils, but oils nonetheless. And so more oil is still getting onto this surface as visitors interact and explore this artifact while it's here at MOHAI. And then also we notice that below, there's parts of the sculpture that are exposed to the water, there's cobwebs down there, and also something that we can't see while we're inside is that there's actually a little piece of the sculpture that's above the museum and sticking out from the roof. So it's also exposed to the weather outside. So this sculpture is, it's kind of decaying very, very slowly, just like the original ship was as well. After the Wawona was retired as a working ship, a group of Seattle citizens in the 1960s came together to purchase it in the hopes of preserving it as a museum ship for the public. But eventually, the efforts to preserve the decaying ship failed. And so the decision was made to dismantle the ship in 2009. And this is one of the results of what they did with those pieces of wood. The sculpture isn't the only place that the different parts of the ship ended up. Some of the smaller, more unique aspects of the interior of the ship were preserved in their original state, like the wood paneling on the inside of the captain's cabin, which is upstairs in our True Northwest exhibit in the Getting Started section. Some of the wood was also used to build the counter for the front desk and the cafe here at MOHAI. So you can see different parts of the ship scattered throughout the museum. You can also visit our neighbors, Northwest Seaport, right here on the north side of the museum on Lake Union. They were formed by the group of citizens who originally purchased the Wawona for preservation, and they continue to share the histories of historic vessels, which you can go and explore. Looking for something to do a little bit closer to home? Make some land art. Create an earthwork sculpture by using natural materials near the place that they were found. You can also explore the MOHAI Collection through our website at mohai.org. That's mohai.org. Thanks for watching.